How exactly should we be dealing with rising levels of inflation? That's exactly what we're going to be covering in this video. So smash that like button and subscribe if you're new. You're watching More Money. Let's get it. What's up, guys? So the Wall Street Journal put out a really interesting article where they were interviewing people who have survived the inflation levels in the 1980s. And in this article, the survivors give us tips on coping with everything that feels a bit more expensive. Now, personally, I think after reading this article, I think the tips that they provided were okay. In the comments, you got some really good tips. And then, of course, I'm going to talk about additional tips that I have for you. So we'll go through all of that in this video. So as you guys already know, US inflation accelerated to 7.5% in January, which is a 4-decade high. It's the highest level since February of 1982. So for a lot of us, especially the people that view this channel, that might be the highest levels of inflation that we've seen in our lives. So we haven't really been accustomed to dealing with higher levels of inflation when we go to the grocery store or the gas stations or anything of those like. That being said, they highlighted Dawn Kelly. And she said that her biggest piece of advice would be to hang on to anything that still works and postpone expenses when possible. That obviously makes sense. So, hanging on to your car and making it last a couple more years or postponing certain repairs on your house and stuff, that makes sense if you can do it. However, when she gave an example here, I found it a little bit odd because she's saying that she paid off her car loan, which is good because she's saving in interest costs, but she continues to drive a banged up 2014 BMW. I don't know about you guys. Maybe it's just because I got poor roots, but driving a 2014 BMW doesn't seem very frugal to me at all. I have a 2015 BMW, and I think that I'm completely overpaying on driving a car when I really should have bought a used Honda or something. So I don't know if that's the best example. That being said, the reason why I wanted to share this article were because of the comments. So you can see here, Todd Mora said that he was a junior in high school during the 70s and he graduated in the 80s. And this is what he remembers. So the first thing they did was they mixed powdered milk with real milk to make it go further. Now, I do remember doing a little bit of that when we were younger, but not that much. Cutting ground beef with Hamburger Helper as his second point. That's interesting. I didn't even know that you could do that. But yeah, I guess cutting ground beef with Hamburger Helper or just buying cheaper cuts of meat could help. Walking or riding a bike everywhere. You know what? I think in 2022, the solution there is more of like a hybrid type work environment. So I think that saves a lot of people on commuting to work if you only have to go into the office 2 or 3 days a week as opposed to 5. Wearing hand-me-down clothes, I guess that makes sense if you're a kid, but if you're older, I think this idea evolves into possibly purchasing from the thrift shop or that kind of stuff to keep the clothing costs down. Personally, I don't really buy clothes. I just use what I have, and then every once in a while, my wife will buy me something at Christmas time, but other than that, I rarely go into the malls. I like his fifth comment, which is scrounging for ways to make money. And I'm actually going to give you 25 tips to make an additional $1,000 in this video. And of course, his number 6 point was very telling. You're always worrying that you could potentially be laid off in a higher inflationary environment. And so what is your backup plan? And I think that's really important to have. And so that's why I'm going to give you those 25 tips on how you can make $1,000 or more with side hustles in this video. But the last point I really wanted to point out was that he said he really loved growing up during that time because everyone was poor. You just grabbed whatever you had, shared, and lived outside doing free stuff. And he's almost looking back on those days fondly and saying those are the days where he wish he could go back. Now, I don't shy away from it. I definitely grew up really poor. I think sometimes when we look at the past, we look at it fondly. There were definitely things that were really good about being in a community where people don't have a lot of material possessions and it's more about your relationships. I get that. But at the same time, there's a lot of bad that comes with that as well. So I don't know if I would look fondly back at my past, but at the same time, I do my best to try not to be materialistic. Now, Investopedia actually gave us some pieces of advice on how to handle living with higher levels of inflation. So the first item that they brought up was you should be owning stocks. So owning some equities could be a very good way to combat inflation. Now, I would caution you here, though, because higher levels of inflation could lead to lower levels of consumer spending, especially in markets where the Federal Reserve is tightening policy. And so I would say that the best stocks to own during inflation would be companies that can increase their prices in line with inflationary price increases. So think of like your Procter and Gamble's, your Google's, even Facebook could probably increase their advertising rates. Who else? Maybe PayPal has a natural hedge, Visa, MasterCard, those guys have natural hedges. Alibaba's another one. Because they're more of like a toll booth, like a gateway almost. And so as prices naturally go up, they just get a higher transaction fee. The one way to tell if the company that you're looking at has pricing power is just to look at the profit margins. Generally, strong profit margins are a really strong indicator that the company has a good moat. And one interesting thing that they pointed out was never underestimate the value of dividends during a period of inflation and how they can increase or at least maintain the level of your portfolio. And I think that makes a lot of sense. The second piece of advice that they said is to purchase a home. And I think what they're really getting across here is when you buy a house, you're fixing the price at which you paid for that house. And so over time, as your salary increases, you're paying the same amount of price back for the home despite the value of the home having increased. That's a good plan, but I think the only way that that really works is if you're willing to stay in the house for a very long term, because in the short term, you could have potential bubbles in the housing market. I think Ontario, where I live, is a great example of a place that could take a 20% correction in the housing prices. And so you got to be careful of that. And so the only way that this works is by thinking long term. And they actually point that out. They're saying that it is true that real estate bubbles are usually followed by correctional periods, sometimes causing homes to lose half their value. Still, on average, housing prices tend to increase over time, which counter affect the impacts of inflation. So yes, over a long period of time, this would be sound advice. Now, what I wanted to point out is on Shopify's website, they actually have 24 great side hustles that made extra money. And so here's the list of the 24. And from what you can see on this list, I've highlighted a few which I wanted to talk about. And the ones that I highlighted, I think are the most easy to monetize gigs, so you can start making money from them sooner rather than having to put in a lot of groundwork. So the first one is creating and selling your own handmade goods. So, setting up an Etsy shop and selling your own handmade goods. The other thing that I would point out here is you might have a lot of stuff like old clothing, old items and stuff you can sell on eBay and make money. I used to sell DVDs on eBay 10 years ago, and I was making, maybe $20 a week or so, but $20 a week over a year or so, it adds up, right? And these were just DVDs that I had sitting in the house in a box that I never was going to use anyway. So the fact that I could sell a few of them every week was really good to me. The second item that I have highlighted is joining the gig economy. I think the gig economy is really interesting. There's so many different types of gigs. And so why would I recommend joining the gig economy? From here, you can see that there's a lot of reasons why people cite that they go to work in the gig economy. So of the top reasons mentioned for working in the gig economy, you'll notice that 55% of the people responded that they wanted to make extra money on the side. But what I found interesting was the next two reasons. So 48% of people surveyed said that they wanted autonomy and control over their schedule. And I think this is very important because just because it's an inflationary environment doesn't necessarily mean that you lose your full-time job, right? You just want to supplement your income. So the gig economy really gives you autonomy and control over that. Do you want to just work an extra day a week on the weekends? Well, you can do that. The other thing is 48% of people, and this I think goes in line with the autonomy and control, is balancing their career and family needs, right? Because you might be busy 9 to 5, but you might be busy sporadically with your evenings and weekends with your kids as well. So do you have like an extra 3 hours here and there where you can turn on an Uber Eats app or something and get to work? Well, over time, you can make quite a bit of money doing that. And so the gig economy really allows you to go in and out without having a set schedule. So I think that's very interesting about that. The last two reasons why respondents say that they have joined the gig economy is, of course, it's the only way to make income. So it seems like 1 in 5 people think that the gig economy work is the only way for them to make income. And I would agree with them. I think if you're looking for full-time work, you can probably make more money with full-time work than you would in the gig economy, although there are people who do quite well working in the gig economy. And then, of course, another 1 in 5 say that they're using it to earn while they're seeking a better job. And I see no fault in that at all. I think that's pretty interesting, where before we used to have to rely exclusively on unemployment before we got a new job. But here now, what the gig economy has allowed us to do is we can actually work a gig type job while we're solidifying the next job opportunity. And so I think it's very interesting. But now going back to this slide here on the 24 great side hustles, I think the gig economy is probably the fastest way that you can start earning money. For a lot of gigs, it's as simple as downloading the app, getting verified, and then turning it on and starting to work. Will you make astronomical amounts of money? No. But I found that when I was doing Uber Eats, I did 250 deliveries on Uber Eats for this channel. I found that I was doing around $25 an hour, so it's not nothing. And I will link to that series at the end of this video. Teaching an online course, if you can get that, I think that's really valuable. I know people who, because they're working from home, they also started teaching online courses. And so it definitely works. I personally do my online courses for free. You guys can sign up for the free online course that I have on financial statement modeling. And the reason why I do my course for free is because it's more about helping people as opposed to making money. And so that's why I do it. I circled starting a YouTube channel. I think people think it's a lot easier to make money on YouTube than it actually is. I would say it takes 6 months to even get monetized. And then after those 6 months, you're still not really making a considerable amount of money. I've been doing YouTube for over a year now. It still doesn't make a considerable amount of money. Now, the good thing for me is my mission is not to make money on YouTube. My mission is to help 1,000 people retire or help 1,000 people achieve financial independence a lot sooner than they normally would have. So it makes sense for me to be on YouTube, but I don't think YouTube is something where you can start generating cash right away. There are exceptions, of course, but I think most creators don't start making any real money for years. Becoming a freelance bookkeeper, if you have taken bookkeeping in school or you have any experience doing your own taxes or any of your own bookkeeping, I think this is a great way to make money. I do have a bookkeeping firm on the side, and it does make quite a bit every year. And more importantly than that, I'm able to help friends and family and clients organize their business affairs and personal affairs in such a way where they can minimize tax. And that's always rewarding to me. But my background is a CPA. And so I had training in taxation at a Big Four accounting firm. I wouldn't expect the average person to have that level of experience, but taking a bookkeeping course and then doing bookkeeping gigs for around $30 an hour is very easy to do, I think. There's a lot of accounting firms that are looking to spit off their bookkeeping work and just do the tax. Personally, myself, if I were to focus more on taxation with my career, I would be looking to hire a bookkeeper just so I can spin off the bookkeeping work and focus more on the higher earning work, which is the taxation part of it. So yeah, becoming a freelance bookkeeper, it's not as hard as you think, and it's a lot easier than you think to get clients, especially around tax time, which is right now. All you would have to do is just go on Craigslist and say bookkeeper looking to find work, and you will have more work than I think you will be able to handle. The only recommendation is make sure you get people to pay you a deposit up front, at least for the work. So that way, worst case scenario, you still get paid a little bit for the work, especially around this time when people are desperate to get bookkeepers. So get a deposit. Participating in paid online surveys, I don't really know much about that. I hope it works. Guys, let me know in the comments if any of you have actually done it. But once again, I've highlighted because if you can get paid to do online surveys, I'm assuming this is something that you can start generating income on right away. Becoming a rideshare driver, that's the same as a gig economy work. All you have to do is get verified, make sure you have the right type of car. There is a specific condition of car or minimum age of the car that you need before you can drive. I did talk about that in a previous video. And so that's something to that's something to be aware of. And also becoming a dog walker. I see ads all over the neighborhood all the time about people who are willing to walk your dog for you. I don't know how important this is during the work from home time that we are in right now. Ontario, we're still somewhat locked down, but I think as people go back to work, a lot of people got pets during the COVID lockdown. So it might be a booming business once everything is reopened. Now, of course, I mentioned in this video that I did do 250 deliveries with Uber Eats, and I got a lot of knowledge and insight on how you can make more money per hour doing Uber Eats, and you can get to that video series right here.